I tell younger leaders, when you don't know what to do, just do the very best that you can where you are, because the path to your dream job often leads through your day job. You can't be a bad steward with a bad attitude, with a terrible work ethic where you are and expect that to lead you to your dream job. You have to be a good steward right where you are, and little do you know who's going to show up, what's going to happen. All of that is part of the mix. And there's so much of the unknown that I look back on my life, and so much of it, I was in the right spot at the right time, but it was really, I think, God's direction and me just kind of following day in and day out.
Welcome to the No One Ever Told Me podcast, where we talk about the things that no one ever tells you that you really need to know to be successful and to thrive in your business and in leadership. Today, my guest is Jeff Henderson, and this entire conversation was a gift. Every once in a while, you meet someone, and the closer you watch their life, you realize from large projects to simple everyday conversations, they are living a masterclass in leadership. Jeff is one of those rare leaders. I've been a student of Jeff's teaching for years, and his sincerity and kindness are unmatched. Today, we talk about how to know when it's time to leave a job, how to leverage side hustles, and so much more. Jeff, thanks a ton for being with us today. I'm so glad you're here. We all have those funny moments where we have to fill out occupation on a form, like a tax form or a car loan or the census every once in a while. When you get to that line on a form, occupation, what does Jeff Henderson put down these days?
I think that's that opens up a whole big, issue for me, Matt, because I think you can check more than one career box. And my first reaction is, why are you limiting me to just one thing? There's a lot that I could, in fact, TD Jakes is a hero of mine. I mean, he's like, people think he's a preacher. Well, that's true, but he's a movie producer, talk show host, author, business entrepreneur. So for me right now, I'll just put pastor, because I think people go, oh, okay, that's what I have a handle for that, right? Versus entrepreneur, all this kind of stuff. So but that's a pet peeve of mine. No. I can't, don't limit me to one career choice.
Don't put Jeff in a box.
See, you've already opened up a can of worms, Matt.
That's perfect. So maybe take us back to the earliest part of your career you can remember. Did you ever have a moment where somebody called you out as Jeff, we see leadership in you, or I see leadership in you? Or was that something maybe you knew that you had at a young age? Where did that gift come from? And maybe who helped encourage you on that journey? I
never really thought of myself as a leader until I got a John Maxwell leadership cassette tape when I was working at Chick-fil-A. And some of your listeners have no idea what the phrase cassette tape means. But so Chick-fil-A had this leadership development program at when I worked there. They still do. And when I was listening to that cassette tape from John, I'm like, oh, I can be a leader. Because I thought a leader was somebody that says, see that hill? Follow me, and we're going to take the hill. My personality is, hey, I see a hill over there. You think we can take it? You think we can do this together? Well, if you think we can do this together, well, let's go. So it's more rallying the troops versus just, running out ahead. And I wasn't very vocal. I was always kind of quiet. So I thought leadership was reserved for the extroverts in the world. And I began to understand, no, I can be a leader. And here's even the better news. I can be a leader within my own personality and gift mix. And when I began to understand that, it was a whole new ball game, because, now I can just be me. I can do that, and I can be comfortable with being me. And so if we're in people, I think people that we're leading or serving, they can smell if we're trying to be somebody than who we really are. And
that's right. So
that was really the point at Chick-fil-A. And then looking back, I began to realize, I've been a leader all my life. I just thought leaders were reserved for the extroverts.
That's great. I love that. Would you take a few minutes and tell us about the For Company?
So this is, I think, to give a little bit of perspective on that, I've never been one. The only thing I've been certain about in terms of my career, Matt, is that I wanted to play in the National Basketball Association. That was like, if you were to tell me, what are you going to do with your life? I'm going to play. with the Atlanta Hawks, and I'm going to lead them to their first NBA championship. The Hawks never drafted me, and I will point this out, Matt, they still have yet to win an NBA championship. And I correlate those two together, that they never drafted me.
Correlation is causality.
That's right. So I've always been on a little bit of a search about, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I began to discover early on that the more I discover who I am and my gift mix, the more it's going to provide clues for that. And so I've been kind of following that along the way. And a mentor of mine always used to say, pay attention to what's being blessed. Pay attention to what's being blessed. So, almost 10 years ago when we launched Gwinnett Church, we launched this campaign called For Gwinnett. And the premise of that was, what do we want to be known for? And, when it comes to at least the church, many people are more familiar with what the church is against rather than what the church is for. So we launched this. And then after launching it, about a year later, I got a coffee mug in the mail from a church in Winnipeg, Canada that said, For Winnipeg, thanks for what y'all are doing. And I thought, wait, people are paying attention to this? And then it just kind of exploded. And then when I wrote the book a couple of years ago, I went on a business breakfast tour because so much of the concepts of what For is about really relates to the business world as well. And I did that to try to see if this message would resonate with businesses. And it did. I went on a 25-city business tour. I call it the business breakfast tour. And so my wife and I began to realize, oh my goodness, there's a lot of traction here. And so we launched the For Company. And the For Company is designed to help companies and people build a good name. And if you have a good name, people will follow you, they'll buy from you because you have credibility, influence, and trust. And in the marketing world, a good name is referenced as a good brand. But all the brand is a good name. And it really goes to one of my life verses, which says, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. One of my other business mentors and heroes, Truett Cathy, that was his life verse. My first business mentor, that was his life verse. And so to be able to launch a company that goes, here's what we do. We help you be for others by building your good name. And it's not about you, it's about what you can do for others. And part of the premise of the For Company is that it's no longer about being the best organization in the world. It's about being the best organization for the world. And when you're for others, you're going to build a good name. And when you build a good name, people will buy from you, follow you, and support you.
That's so great. Jeff, were you a marketing major in college? Is that what I remember?
Advertising. Yep.
Okay. When you took that education path, where did you think that was going to lead you if it wasn't the NBA? What were some other alternative career paths you thought you might have gone on as a young 20-something?
So sports broadcasting was one of them. Okay. I wanted to do that. But then I realized, I've got to live in a small town and make $10,000 a year for 5 years before. And I don't know if I want to do that. Then I discovered there was sports marketing. And so launched really my career. Part of the early stages of my career was spent with the Atlanta Braves and understanding not just sports marketing, but marketing in general. But then I realized the players are the ones that make the money, not the people on the staff many times. So that led me to just a journey, eventually winding up at Chick-fil-A. And I was over all their sports marketing and regional marketing and beverage marketing. And really, probably outside of Truett Cathy, the founder of the company, Matt, I had the coolest job because I got paid for watching college football to see if our ads ran on Saturdays, the Chick-fil-A ads. And so,
what a gig.
it was phenomenal. And I never thought I would leave. Only crazy people ever leave Chick-fil-A. But we got really involved with our church, North Point Community Church, and long story short, there was an opportunity that, there's a much longer story here, but we just felt called really to help launch a church. And I grew up in the church. I'm a preacher's kid, so I know all that. I knew multi-site. I knew franchising from Chick-fil-A. And my dad always used to say that you're going to look back and see how God has, woven your story together. And when I left Chick-fil-A to help start Buckhead Church, I remember thinking, this is the weirdest career move because I'm starting all over in my mid-30s. This is so stupid, but I thought this is what we're supposed to do. And yet, I'm telling you, Matt, not that first month, all the business lessons and all the stuff that came out from learning from Chick-fil-A just started coming out of me. And I'm like, now I see where this is going. So now I'm in my mid-50s and I'm seeing all these pieces come together that you can't see many times when you are in your late 20s, early 30s, or whatever. Which is why I tell younger leaders, when you don't know what to do, just do the very best that you can where you are, because the path to your dream job often leads through your day job. You can't be a bad steward with a bad attitude, with a terrible work ethic where you are, and expect that to lead you to your dream job. You have to be a good steward right where you are. And little do you know who's going to show up, what's going to happen. All of that is part of the mix. And there's so much of the unknown that I look back on my life, and so much of it, I was in the right spot at the right time, but it was really, I think, God's direction and me just kind of following day in and day out.
So this is a little bit of a tangent from the story, but you're talking about just being a good steward of the opportunity that's right in front of you. And you listed a couple things there that I think are helpful when someone might be looking for another opportunity outside that. But how do you pay attention in a moment where you might feel stuck in a job, you are performing the best you can, but you're not sure how to get out of it? So what are maybe some past experiences that guided you to pay attention in moments to know, is there something else I'm supposed to be doing with my time right now?
I'm a firm believer, Matt, in side hustles. And for example, let's take Chick-fil-A, for example. I can't tell you how many people ask me all the time, which I'm totally great with, hey, do you think I should become a Chick-fil-A operator? And my response is, I have no idea. But what you ought to do is you ought to go get a part-time job and work at nights at the store to see if you like it. Well, I already have a full-time job. Well, I know, but if you can either quit your full-time job, which I don't know if I would recommend necessarily, or you can work a full-time job and 2 or 3 nights a week. And if you fall in love with the business, then that's a clue that yes, you probably should be a Chick-fil-A operator. So I'm always, I've had a pinch it over the last 15 years of having side hustles. Some of them pan out, but all of them teach me something. And for example, I launched an online preaching program for preachers several years ago that helped them with preaching. Well, what I learned about online marketing and delivering content to that group is helping me now with what I'm doing with the Four Company. So I think, and the other thing you need to do is to create optimal options. I think we can get paralyzed by thinking, I got to find the one right, perfect answer. And so what happens is because that's such a daunting task to find one right answer, we don't do anything. And then we look up and we're 10, 15 years down the road thinking, how did I get here? Because time flies so fast. So what you need to do is to create optimal options. Create some options for yourself. In fact, one of the best things that Wendy and I did in the first part of our marriage is, you have 2 people coming in and you have 2 different financial situations coming in and you get married.
Yeah.
And so we thought we want to get on the same page financially, and we want to make sure that we're making the wisest financial decisions possible. And that's what we did early on. We went through, a couple of financial courses, and they were awesome. They were fantastic. Little did we know that 5 years into our marriage, we were going to be presented with an opportunity to leave Chick-fil-A and take a 30% pay cut to go help launch Buckhead Church, which was exactly what we wanted to do. We felt called to do. And because we had done that financial small group, we were in a position to make that salary adjustment, not miss a beat, and pursue it. And the worst thing that can happen to somebody, well, not the worst thing, but when we're talking career, the worst thing that can happen is when the right opportunity arrives and you're not ready for it. And so that's why creating optimal options, being ready for it financially, being ready for it emotionally, being ready for it in your family. And in fact, one of the reasons we made this move within the last year is we became empty nesters. And Wendy and I decided in our kids' high school career, this is just us. Someone else might have a different decision, which I would totally respect. Yeah. As for us, the kids loved our church. They loved where we lived. We said, you know what? We're not going to make any career changes right now. Now, I was still doing the side hustles. I was still doing these things that actually built to where we were building, but it wasn't the time for us to make a leap like we've made. when we became empty nesters, now we can make that move. And so that's what we did.
That's great. So you're talking about margin a little bit. It's financial margin, it's emotional margin, it's kind of beta testing with the side hustles. That's so good. And it's so simple, not easy, but it's a pretty simple concept. I love that.
Absolutely. Well, none of this is easy, but it can be simple. It can be simple.
That's great. You're doing a couple things on social media that I just love right now. I think my favorite thing you're doing is you're catching people doing the right thing. Will you talk about that practice for a little bit and maybe some stories that are happening from the brand representation?
Sure.
I'm not sure what you call it. I apologize.
Oh, no. Well, we're simply calling it For You. And part of the premise here is I have a lot of friends in business, and they're just saying, Jeff, the labor shortage is really having a negative impact on my business. And it's not just the people that aren't showing up to work. It's the people that are showing up to work, and they're often facing some disgruntled customers because we're short-staffed and all of that. And it's
taking longer. Yeah.
It's just a really tough time. And so I just decided personally, when I heard that, I just decided what I'm doing right now is, in fact, I did it today. We went to lunch. Our team went to lunch, and the waitress comes over, and I said, hey, thank you for being here. And she was just shocked. And she said, oh, wow, no one's ever said that to me before. Well, thank you, and thank you for being here. And so I thought, what we ought to do? We ought to just start highlighting some people in our community that are on the front lines of service. And so we've, highlighted a barista. We've highlighted someone at Chick-fil-A. We're actually going to surprise someone at a smoothie shop next week. And we're actually going to do that on Instagram Live. And so it's just an opportunity to go, hey, we're for you. But what's been so fun, Matt, is to see people. There was a friend of mine in El Paso, Texas last week that highlighted his barber, and so that's just been fun for us, an opportunity for us to go, hey, we are for you. And then honestly, for me, it's an opportunity to go, and this is what our company's about. We want to be for people. So that's been really, really fun. And the feedback I've been given is, in fact, for the barista that we posted about, well, for everyone we've done this, the comments have been phenomenal. But it's been so fun for the people that we're highlighting to see the comments. I'm like, oh yeah, I love Kion. He's amazing. Every time I go get coffee, he's just, and so for him to read these comments, it's just been a lot of fun.
I've been doing my own kind of scaled back version of that. And something as I'll ask is like, hey, you're really good at this. What do you love about your job? And to hear answers from people who are serving coffee or serving, like you said, in the service industry, whatever their job is, it's remarkable that some people are really passionate about their customers that come in every day and their regulars, and they love getting the opportunity to serve. And because that's a rare experience, it feels like right now, it is 100% worth highlighting those moments and just bragging on those people. I haven't taken the brave step to post about those interactions just yet, but one of my favorite questions to ask people I encounter with is, hey, what do you love about your job? Because when you encounter somebody doing a great job, it's worth saying, hey, listen, I just caught you doing a great job. And I just wanted to tell you that.
I'm trying to highlight our dry cleaners, but every time I come by, she's like, no, I don't have a good hair day today. And I'm like, this is like, it's been like 4 times. And I think your hair looks great. But anyway, I think she's like, please don't do this. But again, we're just trying to highlight people, because again, imagine people coming to work, they're short-staffed, and they get yelled at by a customer, and they're just, they're just doing their job. And so that's been really fun.
I love it. The second thing I love that you've been doing on social media the last couple of weeks is you're like the new version of Cliff Notes. So you're going through a couple new books and highlighting 6 or 7 or 8 things from the book that really stuck out to you. And it's caused me to make some purchases on Amazon. So tell me about that strategy. How's that helping your company, and why are you helping expose people to these new books? And
you have to, when you have a company called the For Company, you have to say, we're for you, and we're going to add value. And I want people to come to, what I'm doing on social media or email, and to get value out of it. We've got products and we have things to sell, and I'm not shy about selling, because if you don't sell anything, you go out of business pretty fast. But at the end of the day, I want it to be value. And so I'm a huge believer in reading. And I think Kathy taught me the 2 ways people improve are the books you read and the people you interact with. But I know a lot of folks just don't have time to read. And I'm like, well, gosh, I'm older than most people I know. That just means that I've had more years to read. And I not only read, I take really good notes, I feel like, so that I can go back to them and go, hey, here's what I learned from that. And then I just thought one day, well, gosh, I've got all this stuff. Why just keep it to myself? Let's just post on social media. It's also an opportunity for me to encourage authors out there that who've had impact. I mean, Seth Godin is kind of a marketing hero of mine. He has no idea who I am, and I don't even know if he saw the post. T.D. Jakes, I mentioned him earlier. I mentioned his communication book. And I'm going to post Donald Miller's book, Business Made Simple, in a few days. It's a way of just me saying thanks to them.
That's really good. So when people reach out that are listening to the show and they've got questions for guests, sometimes they'll say, hey, can you ask them about habits? Like, are they readers? Do they exercise? What are their inputs that help get those outputs? And you just mentioned reading. What's specifically involved in your reading discipline? Do you kind of pick a time and a place that you do that all the time? Or do you just take a book everywhere you go and take notes? How does that work for you practically?
You have to have systems to set up, and you have to have a goal. At least I do. And so I try to read a certain chapter amount each week. It varies from week to week, depending. I mean, this, as you and I were talking, this is a little bit of a crazy week for me. So not a lot of reading done this week, but I'll get a couple of chapters in. If it's a smaller, or if it's not as busy week, I'll get more chapters in. And I try to do that during the morning because I'm writing a second book right now. And one of the best things you can do as a writer is to be a reader. And so I'm trying to really ramp up the reading in a variety of different ways. But yeah, I try to have a goal, and I have a book list every year. So I'm working off a book list. I'm working down the book list. And then sometimes I'll add, this is going to sound like a boring hobby, but I like going to Barnes and Noble and just looking for a new book that's not on my list, or I like tangible bookstores. And but I think having a system, a goal each week, and then knowing, okay, this is my book list for the year. That's been helpful for me. And I would always challenge the staffs that I lead that no one's going to read more books this year than me. And the reason I'm saying that is because I don't want the organization to outgrow me. I don't want you to outgrow me. And one of the ways I keep growing is to keep reading.
Jeff, that's so helpful. Thank you. Will you tell us a little bit about the relationship with John Maxwell that's developed over these last couple of months? I've been noticing some posts with you guys. And so how's that relationship developing?
Sure. Well, when I came out with the book, when I was writing the book a couple of years ago, I tell people in the book, you should ask big. And when it came to who did I want to write the foreword to this book, it was John Maxwell. A variety of different reasons why. Not the least of which is he's sold 34 million books, right? So I tried to get the publisher to put his name in a bigger size than mine, but they said something about integrity and character, and so whatever. So all that said, John was gracious enough to write the foreword to the book. But so grateful for John for doing this. He said, "Hey, I'll do this, but let me read the book." Well, when he read the book, he thought, "Wow, this is really." This is we're singing the same song, but it's off a different song sheet here. And then Mark Cole, who is the CEO of the company, who's a close friend of mine, he was saying the same thing. And as John's going to turn 75 next February. And John's looking at the future and going, I don't want this thing to stop with me. But the great thing about John, I think, when it comes to Chick-fil-A, the adage that we came up there with this line when I was there. We didn't invent just the chicken sandwich. It was really the ad agency's direction. They said, when you invent something, you have credibility. Well, John certainly didn't invent leadership, but I think he invented the leadership category because he's written more about leadership than the other 2, 3, and 4 authors combined. So, but he's looking toward the future. So when he's looking toward the future, he and Mark were saying, we got to bring different voices in that can help us move from persona around one person to a philosophy of leaders.
That's great.
And so I'm the first person they're bringing into the fold other than Mark and John. And so that's been great. So, and we're kind of making it up as we go along, but it's been fantastic. I'll be speaking at a big leadership event in a few weeks with John, and so it's been fun.
Have there been any really positive cultural surprises? That's such a great organization from the outside looking in, but once you get an inside look, is there anything that's been like, oh, wow, this is fantastic. I didn't know it could be like this.
I think the surprising thing is that they're willing to listen to me. Because, you come in and you're like, what in the world do I have to offer? And but they're so open to, here's the thing. The first time I had dinner with John, he tricked me. because he started asking me questions and he started writing down my answers, and I'm talking like I have anything to say. And then I'm like, I just immediately halfway through one of my sentences said, "Stop, you tricked me. I'm here to ask you questions." But he's a constant learner, and there's a humility about that. There's a humility that says, I mean, imagine John's been with kings and presidents and, all this kind of stuff. And here he is with someone 20 years younger than him, and he's asking me questions. So the fact that they would listen and take note of what I have to say in light of the massive success that John and the company has had, that's been encouraging for sure.
I think a learning organization is probably a growing organization. So I love hearing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
John, I'm pretty sure John said this. I'm going to give him credit if he didn't. I heard him say something along the lines of, as you go up in your career, in your profession, there are just some things that you give up. So do you mind talking about some sacrifices that you've made personally or as a family in some of the transitions you've made? What have you had to give up to take the next level of the calling that you're pursuing?
You and I were talking about this before we got started, but there are a lot of folks, and I understand this, that are addicted to the paycheck. But any addiction like that leads to negative consequences. And again, this isn't a diatribe against making money by any means, but we had to give up on that, almost 20 years ago when we left Chick-fil-A to pursue helping launch Buckhead Church. In fact, if I'd stayed at Chick-fil-A, well, here's the thing. There's a lot that I would have experienced. I would probably be on my lake house somewhere right now, that's retired. Right. A lot of my friends are already retired that I was working with back in the day. So here I am still working. At the same time, though, you and I, Matt, would have probably never met because I never would have gone to Buckhead. And when I was at Buckhead, I developed a strong friendship and relationship with the staff at Crosspoint Church, which continues to this day. But I had to give up some financial, dreams early on. Now you look back, and God has been faithful, and because of the financial principles that we learned, it's been fantastic. But you give up on that, and so like, oh wow, and you have to. Two of my closest friends still work at Chick-fil-A, and I remember having a conversation one time with them and said, you know what, I'll just be honest with you. Because they're incredibly generous guys, but I'm at their lake house, right? And it's just massive, beautiful lake house. And both of them have a lake house not too far from one another. So there's three of us. Two of us have lake houses. One of us don't. And imagine who the one is that doesn't have a lake house. And I said, I have to be honest with you. Sometimes I find myself being envious of the fact that you guys have a lake house and I don't. But then they said, yeah, but when we go out of town somewhere and somebody comes up to the three of us and they're talking to you because they know who you are, they have no clue who we are. So everybody has something that we're giving up. Everybody has something that we're envious of. So I think early on I gave up the financial rewards of working at a multi-billion-dollar company to go after what I felt like was God's calling. And it was risky, This wasn't like I was going to a normal church. I was going to a church where it's video preaching, and that was unheard of back in the day. But sometimes the greatest risk isn't leaving. Sometimes the greatest risk is staying because you get handcuffed.
Hang on one second. Can you say that again? And can you spend a few minutes unpacking that?
Yeah. So the greatest risk sometimes it isn't staying. Or isn't leaving. The greatest risk is staying. And if you're not careful, you can couch wisdom, but it's really fear. And you have to know the difference between wisdom and fear. Wisdom can say it's still a risk, but it's a risk worth taking. Any great thing in life is going to come with risk. Now you can minimize the risk. In fact, one of the things I've done on my website is I've created something called the Career Risk Calculator. And what it's doing is it's shrinking the gap of your risk. So you take it, you either get a red light, yellow light, or green light. It's not a pass fail.
Awesome.
But if you get a red light, it means, okay, whoa, you got some work to do. If you get a yellow light, it means, okay, cool, you've got some momentum here. If you get a green light, it doesn't mean you need to leap. It means, okay, you've created optimal options, and now you can keep moving forward. But I don't care what light you have, there's still going to be risk associated with it.
That's right.
But when we decided to leave Gwinnett Church, imagine this. We didn't just leave a job. We left our community. We left our church. I named this church. I was the lead pastor of 2 Gwinnett Church locations. We loved it. We loved the people. We felt like this is what God was calling us to do. And we felt like, you know what? We're not going to be good stewards if we don't go after this. But
yeah,
the fortunate thing about being as old as I am, Matt, is I have more experience now. I felt the same way when I left Chick-fil-A. I felt the same way when I left Buckhead Church to help Gwinnett Church. I had a pastor friend of mine tell me, why in the world are you leaving Buckhead Church? This is the coolest church building in America, right in the heart of one of the most significant places in our city, and you're starting all over to go to set up, tear down the church. But again, it was like, no, I feel like this is the right thing for us to do right now. But part of that is having a wise group of people. There's a biblical principle, depending on what people may think about the Bible. I'm telling you, this principle is just still true. And that is plans fail for lack of advisors, but with wise counselors, they succeed. And we won't make a decision without getting a green light from a series of wise counselors in our lives. But when you have those green lights and you feel this is the right thing to do, there's still going to be risk. But in our case, at each time, the risk was greater of staying than leaving.
Jeff, that's so good. That's unbelievably helpful. I don't think you can talk about a relationship with risk and some of the systems you've set up to mitigate without talking about your relationship with failure. And I think failure is most times, a better teacher than our successes. Are there any failures from time at Chick-fil-A or time in ministry that you'd be comfortable sharing that might illuminate some lessons you've learned?
Oh, gosh. I don't think you have enough time here, Matt, for this. I've got a litany of stories. I'll say this, though. I've learned this about failure. And that is to ask the question, what am I learning through this? And right now, I give myself a 24-hour rule. And the 24-hour rule is that I give myself 24 hours of grieving. And, I grieve, or, man, I'm so stupid, or whatever. And then after the 24-hour point, it's time to get back up and move on. But, at Chick-fil-A, I'm known as the person who put 72,000 cow plush toys in the stadium seats at the Georgia Dome only to be thrown on the field. And that was my idea, which was a marketing disaster. And yet it ended up being something great, because next year it gave us the idea of putting parachutes on the cows. And as the 2 teams ran onto the field, dumping thousands of parachuting cows down into the stands, which is something Chick-fil-A still does to this day. And so, I've all kinds of things, from just trying things at Buckhead Church that didn't work in the early days, sometimes trying things and they worked too well. Like you're overwhelmed with the response. Like when we opened Gwinnett Church, we literally the police shut down the road because there were too many people trying to get into the church. Well, wow. That's amazing, but that's probably a mistake in planning on my part, not to be prepared for that. But so there's all kind of mistakes, but here's the thing. I've gotten more comfortable, but it's never become pain-free. Every mistake, every failure has pain associated with it. But to give myself a mourning period of 24 hours, and a friend of mine mentioned to me one day, he said, if you want to be an innovator, this is one of the prices. A couple of prices you pay as an innovator. You are making something up, and you're going to make a mistake, and you're going to get arrows shot in your back from the people that aren't moving. And if you don't want to do that, then that's fine, but just don't be an innovator. And I think the people that listen to your podcast are innovative. They want to change things. That's going to require you trying some things that aren't working. A friend of mine, David Butler, used to be the innovation director at Coca-Cola. And I asked him one time, I said, so when do you, this is a publicly traded company, when you launch a product, at what point does this one have to work? Like you've launched 4 drinks and they haven't worked. Does the 5th one have to drink or you're fired? And he said, I can't think of it that way. I can't ask, is it working? I have to ask, what am I learning? And when he said that, I thought, oh my gosh, that's why he's so good at what he does. It's because he's courageous enough to just go, no, we're learning from this, and we're going to leverage the failure to keep moving forward. And so, but yeah, I've got all, but you're thinking, if I didn't have failure, I wouldn't be where we are right now.
That's great. So you've referenced a couple relationships, people with influential and responsible jobs at Coca-Cola, at Chick-fil-A, other industries. What did you do in your life that positioned you to have those types of relationships? So if people are listening, they're in smaller communities that may not have access to really strong executive leadership, that may not have those mentor relationships, what's something somebody can do to grow relationships with people who are a little further ahead in their careers or a little further ahead in their leadership development? How did you develop that in your life personally?
The first mistake I see people making is they'll compare their network to someone else's and go, I don't know anybody. I don't think that's true. I think we have a network of people. You may not know the CEO of Coca-Cola, but I bet it's the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I bet you know enough people that could eventually find the CEO of Coca-Cola. So one of the things that John Maxwell has taught me is a fantastic question to ask people. And that is, who do you know that I need to know? I mean, that's a game-changing question. And if they're able to say or willing to say, well, I know Matt Warren, and he's up in Nashville, and you need to know him. Okay, then the second question is, could you put me in touch with Matt? And suddenly your network is expanded. So there's the old advice, great advice, start where you are, do what you can, and use what you have. And so when it comes to networking, use what you have, use your current existing network, and go to breakfast with people and ask them, I know we're friends, but tell me your career story a little bit more. Tell me how you got to where you are, and listen, and then get to the end of that and go, hey, who do you know that I can know? Because one of the things I'm doing right now, I'm trying to expand my personal network. And expanding your personal network is one of the best gifts that you can give yourself, your company, your career. Because as you know, Matt, and I tell this to my kids a lot, it's true. It's kind of bothersome sometimes, but it's not as much what you know as who you know. And I wish sometimes that wasn't true in life, but it really is. Now, you need to know something. You need to have, you need to have credibility in terms of what you do. But if I had to pick between what I know and who I know, I'll pick who I know. Because if I pick the right who and they can sharpen me, they'll make me better. So I would begin to look at your existing network and ask the question, how can I grow in the next quarter? How can I grow my network by 3 people I don't know now who want to be in my field? The other thing that John Maxwell has helped me to do is he's given me a vision of what I want to be. Even if I can't describe, this is what I want to do. What I've done is I've pointed to John, and I've pointed to a Michael Hyatt, and I've pointed to a Donald Miller, and I go, I don't know if I have the words for it, but what they're doing is sort of what I want to do. And being able to point to somebody and go, that's it. That's who I want to be. That's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. I might do it differently. I might have a different angle. I might have a different product. I might say things differently or whatever. But that's what I want to, that gives me a roadmap. So I think one of the most helpful things for your listeners is to ask them, who is their roadmap? Who is their guide, even if they don't know them, right? And for me, I can wake up every morning and go, John Maxwell, Michael Hyatt, Donald Miller. That's kind of the roadmap I want to follow right now.
Have you identified specifically maybe what it is that Michael's done or Don's done or John's done? Is it influence? Is it impact? How do you quantify or try to qualify what it is that they're doing that just resonates with you?
I think we have similar skill sets. I mean, they're all of them are much better writers and speakers, but I think we have similar skill sets there. And so that's probably what appeals to me as well. And I love the fact that they have created a team of people around them. And I've been in Michael's office, I've been in John's office, I've been in Donald's house, but I haven't been in his office. But I know enough people that have worked with him. They've just created a great company culture. And I like the fact that they're helping people with their content. And I like the way that they've done it. I like the way how they balance adding value to people at the same time being smart business people. But I think probably a lot of it has to do with similar skill sets.
Man, that's so good. I'm not sure how to ask this next question specifically. So it can be as generic as you want it to be. But when it comes to the things, the most significant things you know now that no one ever told you on the front end of this journey, and it can be about your most recent transition, it can be about your entire professional career. But looking back, where were the lessons that you learned the hard way that it's like, man, if I didn't learn that, I wouldn't be the leader I am right now?
You and I talked about this earlier, but I think the fact that you can check more than one career box was something that I didn't know. No one ever, because you go to college and you're like, what is your major? And there's boxes and it's just check one.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think that's the worst question we can ask people at 18 and 19 years old, but that's for another podcast for another time.
That's right.
And so I think, I can check more than one career box. You mean I can go over here, do this, write a book, then come over here and do an online business, and come over here and then go speak, and then come over here and launch something for nonprofits. You mean I can do all that? I don't have to just stay in one lane. So that was something that I don't think anybody told me. I just discovered. And part of it was discovering it by looking at people like a Michael Hyatt and John Maxwell and Donald Miller and others to go, oh, wow, they're checking more than one career box. I think this idea, I've learned this more over the last year, that peace leads to provision. That the more at peace I am with myself and life and people, provision seems to show up. And that doesn't mean I'm lazy. It doesn't mean I sleep until 10. I get up early and do all the stuff you're supposed to do. But I think my main goal right now is to be at peace with Wendy, be at peace with the kids, be at peace with the relationships, and be at peace with God. And the provision it's interesting. The more at peace I am, the greater the provision has happened in this past year. When I start getting nervous and worried, we've had a great first year in our business, but I told Wendy the other day, I'm already starting to worry about next year. Like, what if next year isn't as good as this first year? What if all this is just a fluke? And then I go, no. Peace leads to provision. The more at peace, because the more at peace I am, the more creative I'm going to be, the better I'm just going to be to the people in my life. Because if I'm totally stressed out all the time and worried in a basket case, that's typically not the best version of any of us. So
that's right.
Fighting for peace, when we think peace is this lazy pursuit, it's a fight. It's a battle. It's when you're fighting for your emotional peace, your mental peace, your physical peace, and spiritual peace, it's a battle. And so this idea of that peace leads to provision, no one ever told me that. I think I've experienced that. And I feel like that's something God, taught me this year is if you're at peace, then you're showing that you're trusting me and you're going to let things happen versus trying to force things happen. A mentor of mine says,
that's great.
Force versus flow. If you're forcing things, it's probably not the path. If things are flowing, pay attention to that and just get in the stream and follow it.
I love that. So maybe when you get to the end of 2021 and as you look into 2022, you said you've got some trepidation a little bit about the company for next year, but how are you defining success? What are some goals you have for the company and for your family moving into this new venture for the next maybe 18 months?
So part of the challenge for me, Matt, is saying no right now because you're saying no to revenue. But one of the things Wendy and I are committed to is to building a life that we enjoy. And what I mean by that is saying yes to our highest callings and not booking up our calendar fully because I got to pay the bills. Yeah, I got to pay the bills, but I don't want to be chasing revenue. You have to do that early, and there's certainly part of that, right? But I don't want to build a life that I don't enjoy. And so I got an email today, would you kind of speak at this? And I love those emails, but I was looking at the content of what they were asking me to speak on, and I'm like, I don't know anything about this. So, I could take this speaking opportunity, but I don't think I would be of good service to you. So I ended up saying no, because I don't want to build a life that I don't enjoy. And I'm able to do that right now, being in our 50s. And, we've made some wise financial decisions over the years to be able to, again, that's about creating optimal options that I talked about earlier. And I just don't want to build a life that I don't enjoy. I want to be able to go see my kids in Birmingham when we want to. But at the same time, I want I'm excited about what we're doing. And at the same time, we're kind of making it up as we go along. I mean, one of the things Truett taught me is take advantage of unexpected opportunities. So there are opportunities that I don't know anything about. There are opportunities that you currently don't know anything about. There are opportunities that your listeners don't currently know anything about that are heading your way. All right. So when I left Gwinnett Church, the first thing I did is I hired a transition consultant. And it was fantastic. One of the best decisions I made in this journey. And the first thing he taught me was, don't fill up your calendar too quickly, because you're going to fill it up, because you're going to feel the pressure that you're going to need to fill it up. And then you're going to fill it up potentially with the wrong things. And then you're going to be handcuffed and the right things are going to come along. And he was so right. There have been so many things that I've been able to say yes to because I just didn't fill up my calendar completely. And
that's perfect.
And there's a transition. For those of your listeners that are making a transition, you have to understand that part of this journey toward next, there's a grief process, and you have to grieve. And we grieved the loss of losing our community, and it was. And you can have one of two choices. You can leave a job and go, "I'm so glad I'm out of here." That's one part of it. Or you can go, "I love those people. That was such a great ride. I feel like I'm supposed to leave now. But wow, that hurts." And even though it hurts, I would always take that option. Because that means that your time there was well spent with a lot of joy, with a lot of great people. But you got to move on. So I would just say, be careful with the grief, and give yourself some seasons or some time to grieve when you're making a turn, because you have to finish well. But when you're making a turn toward next, you got to create some opportunity to grieve what was.
Jeff, that's so great. Thanks for sharing that wisdom with us. I really appreciate it. So if there's any small business owners that want to connect, or any business owner that wants to connect with the For Company, they want to adjust their messaging, they want to be for the people that they're serving, what's the best way to connect with you and with the company?
Yeah, I would just ask them to go to jeffhenderson.com, Matt, and they're going to find the career risk calculator that I mentioned. That's completely free. There's a voices assessment that helps them clarify their voice. That's completely free. And there's an organizational assessment as well. That's completely free, because we're just trying to add value. And then, and then they can email me there. But I think the resources, hopefully when they go to jeffhenderson.com, they'll see, oh, these folks are really trying to add value and to help me.
I love that. And then obviously we'll make sure everybody follows you on Instagram, because the catching people doing the right thing, and then obviously the cliff notes that you're doing, that I'll call them, are just so helpful. So anything else there?
Matt. Yeah. So we'll do this Instagram live. It's going to be really fun for the smoothie place. So it's been fun.
When's that coming up?
Coming up in a few days. Not sure when this is going to air. So, but it'll come up this fall, but it'll still be posted whether they catch it live or not.
Okay, great.
But so that's fun. But I would encourage people to do it in their communities as well, to leverage their social media platform for good. I think social media could use a little bit of help on that.
Well, Jeff, thanks for your time. I know this is a really busy week, but thanks for stopping to share your wisdom and all the lessons you've been learning these last several years in ministry and now into the marketplace. So we're grateful. We're cheering you on from the sidelines.
Likewise, Matt. Big fan of yours and all that you're doing. Thanks for having me on.
You see what I was talking about? Jeff has a sense of ease and clarity about his life that I find terribly admirable. I know I typically try to find a few major takeaways, but this conversation made it really difficult to narrow it down to just 3. Jeff led us through a masterclass in every single answer he had today, so I'm sure maybe after a couple listens, I might change these. But for now, here are my top 3 takeaways. Number 1, I love how he paid attention at Chick-fil-A. He knew he was in a dream job at that time, and I have to imagine one thing that made it so was working for Truett Cathy. This moment passed pretty quickly in the conversation, but it stuck out to me. It was when Jeff remembered Truett saying there are 2 ways you improve: the books you read and the people you interact with. It's so simple, but what a great challenge. Pay attention to what goes in your mind and pay attention to who you spend your time with. Number 2, I love it when Jeff said sometimes the risk is in staying. I heard another leader say it like this: all of life has risk. There's risk in the doing and there's risk in the not doing, but a life worth living is one that makes proactive mistakes, not passive ones. I don't believe everyone should suddenly quit their job and start selling farm tables on Etsy, But I do believe more of us are scared to ask the question about the work we're supposed to be doing because we're afraid of what the answer might be. So be brave enough to ask yourself hard questions, then widen the circle and be brave enough to ask those closest to you the same questions. My third favorite part was the lesson Jeff learned from John Maxwell with regards to growing your circle and growing your influence. It's a simple and powerful question. Who do you know that I need to know? And bravely asking the follow-up, could you put me in touch with them? Well, I know you probably had a couple favorite lessons from this one as well, so make sure you let Jeff and I know by dropping a comment on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. And as always, thanks for listening, and make sure you join us for the next No One Ever Told Me podcast.